Welcome to another episode on Code with me. In today's tutorial, we will be building a full-blown to-do list app. This app will be covering some basics such as show task, add task, delete task, and save and exit. It will be fun and easy. And for us to start this particular task, we need to put into consideration of some very few key important things. One, we will be using functions to separate different parts of this app. Secondly, we'll be using the date.time to be able to save the date a task is being entered. To begin, the first thing we'll be creating will be two very important variables. The first one will be the tasks. Now, tasks will be equals to an empty list. This is where we want to save task and retrieve it. The next one we want to create is the file name. Now, the file name is where we want to be saving this file to. And so let's call that to-do_list.txt because it's going to be a text file. Having created these two important variables, the next step will be to create two very important functions that will be handling the reading of the file and the writing to the file. Reading means you should load what is already in the file, and writing means you should save whatever we want to that file. So we're going to create these two things with a function. We're going to define load task to read the file, and load task will be just to read the file. And because we want to read the file, we want to use the try except just to handle errors properly. And we'll explain that in a few minutes. Now, we read a file with open, and the reason why we're using with open is so that the file can automatically close when we forget to close it. And this open takes in two things. The first thing is the file name, and the second thing is the action. What do we want to do? Here we want to load the file, which means we want to read the file. I want to read it as file. Now remember, this file is just a variable name that I want to use. You can name it whatever you want. You can name it open as book, open as story, whatever you want to do, open as to do. So now what do we want to do with this file that we just opened? Because we want to read it, we want to add everything we've opened into the task so that the task will be able to populate everything in that file for us. And we'll do that with a for loop. So we say for line in file, which is this very one. For line in file, we want tasks to append, which means to add every line that is found in this task. So to add everything here line by line into this task, and it's going to make it visible for us to see what is in that file. So that is what we're first doing. We want to read what is in the file first of all. So tags that append line dot strip. Now the reason why we're using this dot strip is so that it can remove every white spaces that is found. Now that we've read the file, another question we need to ask ourselves is, what if there is no file with this name? What happens? If there's no file with this name and we run this program, of course we're going to get an error. And that is why we're using the try. Try means to check if there's a file that has this name. But if the file does not have this name, then we use the except. And then the except, we want to check for file not found error. And the file not found error is going to tell if there's no file found with that name, we just want to pass. Because remember, the first time we are creating this file, of course, we don't have anything saved with this file name. So we're definitely going to get an error. So we're asking it that if it doesn't see any file that has this name, it should obviously pass the file. And that is how we've created the read file. The second thing we want to do now is to create the save file. Call that save tasks. And save tasks, we don't need to use a try because we are obviously going to pass something into the file, and we just do the with open. And like I said, it takes two things. One is the file name. File name. And the second is the action. And this time around, we want to write to the file, which means we want to save something to the file. And we want to save that thing as file. Now, what do we want to save we want to save whatever is in this task into the file. So whenever a user saves something, it should pass whatever is being saved. They should add that thing to this task. When it has added the things to the task, it should now save it to this file. That is simply what we want to do. And what we want to do is also using the for loop. So we'll say for tasks, which means for each task in the tasks, in all the tasks that is being in the list, we want to the file to write, which is file.write, want file.write, and we want him to write task. So I'm going to use an f string to pass that. The reason why I'm using an f string is because I want to have a /n so that whenever the user wants to pass in something else, it will go at the bottom and not just write it in a straight line. If I don't use this /n, it's going to write everything in a straight line. So the /n means it should pass it on to the next line. So with this, we've actually simply created a task. And now that is being passed, we need to send a message to the user. So let's send a message with print. Your task was added successfully. So that's the message we want to pass to the user, that the task was passed in successfully. Good. The next thing we want to do is to create one that would begin to show the task. So we want to, a function that will show task, another function that will add it, and another function that will delete. So to create a function that would show the task is quite very simple. Let's define a function and let's call it show task. Now this is going to be showing all the tasks that is in the list. And we're going to check if not tasks. Now what we're trying to do is, if there is nothing found in the tasks, we want to print something like no task found. That is what we want to do. So we want to print no task found. But if there is something in the tasks, we're going to use the else. And we use a for loop. So we'll say for I, task in enumerate tasks, I is plus equals 1, print, I would explain this, print, use the f string, and then we'll pass in I dot space, and then we'll pass in tasks. Now what we've done here is to create a function that would show whatever is in the task. So first we check if not task, which means if the task is empty, it should show no task found, right? But if there are things in the task, it should do a for loop for those things. That is to give you the list of things in that task. Now the reason why I'm using an enumerate is so that it can give me numbers added to the task. So it's going to give me something like this: 1, add task, or 1, play football, 2, copy, and things like that. So it's going to add numbers to the task. Now, why I'm using a I plus equals 1 is because if we don't do this, the counting is going to start from 0. So it will say 0, 1, 2, 3, and we don't want that. We want it to start from 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's why we've done the I plus equals 1, so that it will, add 1 to each step of it and then put them in alphabetical order. Now, let's create one of the most important functions of this project, which is to add user, or let's say add task, sorry. Let's add task. And add task is going to take a parameter called user. The reason why we're putting a parameter called user is so that we can know who is actually adding that particular task, and that is why we've created a parameter called user. Beautiful. Now, having added that, let's now create an object or a dictionary. Let's call that dictionary task now. The reason why we are creating an empty dictionary is so that we can be able to add a few things. The first thing we want to add is the task that is being entered by the user. So let's call a variable task, and we're going to have an input, and we want to ask the user what will you like to do today? Now ask the user what he or she would like to do today. The second thing we'd like to ask the user is the date or the time. What time will this user like to do what he or she wants to do? So let's input that. Let's call that set task time. And because we want to set the task time, we need to get a particular format. So let's say this particular time we're requesting from the user. I want to give them an example. So example should be the day, because we're in Africa. So we do day, month, and year. So this is what we want to get from the user. So we'll give an example of what we need from the user. So you should pass in the date, the month, and the year. But now, because we are passing in the date, month, and year, we cannot pass it like this into our project. It will not make much sense. So let us convert this particular date to a standard date. And for us to do that, we need to import date time. So let's go above our project and import date time. Let's come here. Let's import date time. That's it. So we've imported date time and we're going to use that here. Good. Now let's convert this date we've received to a standard time. So let's call that variable time, and we'll say time will be equals to date time, which we just installed, dot date time dot strip. Now the reason why we're using strip is because we want to pass in. Strip takes in two functions. One is the input and second is the format, or the way we want the date to be passed. So the first one we're going to pass is the input, which is date. Then the second we want to pass in is the format. So we want it in mod D, which is for date, slash mod M, which is for month, slash mod capital Y, which is for the year. Now if we do small letter y, it's going to give us a small it means the user would only enter 25. But since we are receiving 2025, we need to put the capital letter Y so that we can get that from the user. Then the next thing we also want to get is the hour. So let's do mod H for the hour and mod M for the minutes to be able to get the minutes. And let's update our user example. So let's say if the user puts in 1409, good. So the user can also, we also request the user to put in time to make it more precise. Now that we've converted the time, let's pass all of these things into our tasks now. Okay, let's pass that into the dictionary task now. So task now dot update. Update is used to update it and also add things. So let's update it. And first thing, passing the string. The first string we want to pass in is the user, which means who is making this update. And then we pass in the user parameter that was passed in the beginning. This very user parameter is what we've passed in here. That's the first thing we want to get. The next thing we want to get is the task. What does this person want to do? And then we pass in the task. And then the next thing we want to pass in is the date, which means the day this person wants to perform this task. And since we've passed in the time, we can as well just pass in time here. But let's make this time more attractive. So let's do a dot strip time. Dot strip time is going to make it very, very beautiful. So in dot strip time, we pass in the string and we want to get the mod capital letter A is going to give us the full day. And then it should give us the small letter D for the date. Then it should give us another mod B for the full month name and a mod Y for the year. And we want to get the time. So for the time, we're going to use in strip time is mod I, capital letter I, and then mod capital letter M for the minutes. And then let's do a mod P to tell us whether it's AM or PM. So if the person puts, if the time is less than 12, it's AM. From 12 below, from anything below 12 will be AM. Anything 12 above is definitely going to appear in PM. So that is just what we want to get. Now let's pass in this task now. Let's add it into our list. So our list is going to be made up of different objects or dictionaries. So let's do the tasks, which is the tasks dot append, and then want to put in the tags now. And after we do that, we want to print task added successfully, so that the user would know he or she or whoever is using this app would know that the task has been added successfully. And that's that with the adding tags user. The next thing we'd like to build now is the to delete the tags. To create delete tags, let's define a function called delete task. And this delete tag, the first thing we want to do is to show task. Now we got this show tags from our function in the beginning. If you remember when we created this function called showing of the tags, where it gives us the list of all the tags. So we need to know what we want to delete, and we will be deleting by index. So let's use a try to make sure we are getting an index when we want to delete a task. So the first thing we want to do is to get what the index the user wants to delete. So let's call that remove task will be equals to int, and then want to pass an input, and then want to say enter index number to delete, to remove rather. So we're telling the user to enter index number to remove, because the person is going to see it in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we want the person to do that, and then we want to minus that entry by 1. Remember, in the beginning when we were doing the show tags, we incremented everything by +1. So the one that is going to be 0 will be 1, the one that is supposed to be 1 will be 2, and the other. So now we are minusing 1 from whatever is entered, so that we can actually target what is in the list. So having gotten that, we now want to check if 0 is less than or equals to the remove task, and remove task is less than the length of the things inside the list, then you should go ahead and remove it. So what this line of code is trying to say, that you should check if this thing that is entered is greater than or equals to 0. Okay, so if the person says number 1 minus 1 is 0, so this should work. But if the person should say minus, or if the person should say 0 minus 1 is -1, and -1 is less than 0, so this line is not going to work. It will make sure that anything under this if statement does not work. So that is just what we are doing there. Okay, so now if that if statement is passed, we want tasks to pop. It should pop the index that was passed by the user, which is the remove task. But now we need to print something to the console to show that it was successfully removed. So let's call a variable called removed, should be equals to that. Okay, so that we can pass in something. So let's print something like removed, and then we are going to call the removed successfully. So we're trying to say that the task, it has removed that task successfully. So let's pass in an f string so that we'll be able to access the removed. Good. Okay, so now we've passed an f string to be able to access the removed, and we are going to remove that thing successfully, and we'll pass an information to the user that, oh, that task you're trying to remove has been removed successfully. Okay, now what if that goes wrong? So let's put an else. And this else wants to print let's say invalid number, just to tell the user that, oh, this number you entered is not valid. Okay, and then let's create an except, and this except is going to be a value error, and let's say input print, sorry, let's print invalid entry. Okay, so first we want to check if this works. You should remove it, else you should tell the person, oh, it's an invalid number. Now, if the person should enter a string other than a number, we want to exit gratefully. Let's say invalid. Oh yeah, we need to use entry actually. Invalid entry. Sorry, let's do that again. Invalid entry. Numbers only allowed. Okay, so numbers within lists. Let's say numbers within lists only allowed. Beautiful. So now we've been able to delete what is in the project. So we created the tags to remove it. We checked if it's there, else print invalid number. If it's a string, tell the person that it's only numbers that is allowed. So that is the way to delete. So we just created the delete. Now our program is almost there. The final thing we'll be doing now is to create a menu that will run all of these beautiful things that we've just created. It's a great thing to have stayed with us thus far. I really appreciate your time for staying with us to this point. Now let's build the main menu that is going to run all of these wonderful things. And to do that, we're going to define a function called main. Now we'll define the function called main. The first thing we want to do is to load task. Now I want to read the file that is in there. The next thing after loading the file we want to do is to get the username. So who is actually trying to run this project? So we need to get a user. So let's say user is equals to input. Let's say please enter your name. Now let's say supposing it's a login, if the person is already logged in, we'll just use the person's information. But here we're just asking the user to manually log in because we want to know who is entering. And the reason why we're using this user, if you remember in our add task, we were passing a parameter called user. So that parameter is what we have here. So we're going to pass this now into that function to be able to know who is using our application. Now let's create a while loop to make the program continue to run until the user decides to exit. So we say while true, we want to now print so many things. So let's just print some of the things we have here. We have the to-do list, so let's copy that. Let's just copy that, and that will be easier to do rather than creating it afresh. Great, sweet. So now so while this is true, we want to, first of all, let's welcome the user. So let's print let's welcome the user. Let's use a /n/n to say welcome, and then we pass in user. Remember to use the F at the beginning of the string so that we can be able to format that properly, and tab so that it will work because we're using a while loop. So we need to, put it under the while loop with a tab or space. So now the first thing we want to do is welcome the user. The next thing we want to do is to print. Let's print this line. Let's copy everything here and paste in here. Good. So we are saying we're welcoming the user. So we say welcome user, and then we print to-do list. And now let's pass in the list of things we want to do, or the list of options that we have for our project. So the first one we'll have is this one. Sorry about that. I'm a bit fast about that. Control X, Control V, and this will be the first thing we'll have. It is the show task. Let's use /n to next it to the next one, and we say number 2. What we have is the add task. Yep. Always make sure there's a dot after that, just to make it look good and beautiful. Another /n to add the next task. /n. We add number 3, which is to delete task. And the last one, /n, for number 4, which is to save and exit. So those are all the options we have. So what we're saying is run this program while through, welcome the user, then show the user the list of things the person wants to do. Now let's get the choice. So we say if, let's space this out with the /n so that we can get a space for the if. Good. Now let's create a variable called choice. Sorry, not if. Let's create a variable called choice. And we'll say choice is equals to the input, which means whatever the user wants to input. And once choose, want the user to choose an option. Choose an option. Then let's give the user a hint. Let's just call this hint. And let's say numbers only, because we want him to select it by numbers. Beautiful. So now that we've asked the user to enter their choice, next thing we want to do is to create conditions. So let's create the first condition. Now the first condition is if choice is equals the string 1, right? If choice equals the string 1, then we want to call the show tags, which is this function, right? Else if choice is equals the string 2, we want him to do the add task. So let's call the add task function, and then the add task has a parameter, so we need to pass in the user. So we're passing in the user from what we have at the top there. Then else if choice is equals string 3, of course we want to delete, so let's call the delete task. And lastly, else if choice is equals the string 4, then we want to save, so let's call the save task. Now it means the user wants to exit, so because the user wants to exit, we want to save everything the user has entered, and then want to print maybe a goodbye message. So let's print tasks saved, goodbye. So task saved and goodbye, and then we break out of the function, right? But if none of those options are there, we should just print invalid choice. Please try again. Something like that. Okay, so that's that about the main. So as simple as that. First we load the task. Second, we put the user who is using this task we want to know. Then once that is done, we welcome the user, give the user a menu. If the user makes a choice, we check for all of these conditions to run each of these functions that we've created from the beginning. So to choose a particular function to run. Now that is done, the last thing is to run our project. Before we run our function, please note that I just made a very little change to the main function. And what I just did was just add a /n to the enter your name, a /n to the to-do list, just to properly space things out. Now to run our function, we type an if __ name is equals double quotes __ main __ semicolon, then we call the main function. Now this line is just automatically going to run the main function. To look for the main one that has the name main, and then it will run this function for us and everything that is here. So let's run our function and see, let's run our app and see what we've done so far. So you could use this playlist at the top right corner, or type in the name of the file with py space your file name.py, but I'll run it from here. As you can see, it has asked me to enter the name, so let's start the name with code. Oh, sorry, let's be here, code with me, and it says welcome code with me. What would you like to do today? If I click on number 1, which is to show task, and I click enter, you would see it says no task found because there is nothing in the list yet. Now let's go to number 2 where we need to add tasks. If I click on number 2 and click enter, it says what would you like to do today, and I say code with everyone, and it asks me to set a time to do that, and I can say tomorrow, which is the 26th from the day I'm recording this video, / June, which is 6, 2025, and the time will be 2 p.m. so let's say 14.00. and now you see it says task added successfully. Now let's check if the task was added. So if I click on 1 to show task, you can see that the task has been added successfully. The user is code with me, the task is code with everyone, and the date is Thursday, and it has given me a very lovely date. Now it asks if I want to continue. I can still continue without exiting. Let's add another task for code with me. So let's click on 2 to add task, and let's say this time play football. I want to do that by 5 or 6, so let's say 16:30, and we have to put the date too, so let's say 29th 6 2025, and enter, and it says the task has been added successfully. Now it asks if I want to do something else. If I should click on show the task and enter it, you can see it has added both this and this. Now I want to save the file. I want to save this, so I want to create a file and save these two things that has been entered. So I'm going to click 4 as the next option. When I enter, it says your task has been added successfully. So for the two things I did, it showed tasks added successfully for those tasks, and it says goodbye. Now it has created a file for me here. If you look at my console, you see a file at the top left, to-do list. It has been created. Now when you click on that to-do list, you can see all the files that was created, and the person who created that file was code with me. And that is how to build a to-do list app with Python. Thank you for staying tuned. Please don't forget to like this video and subscribe. God bless you.